Do it.
Okay. Hello. Welcome to the Mindmeld Live. I'm Cairo. We have Kenny and Ishaan here. Let's make sure we're streaming. Yeah, we're streaming. And we don't have a guest today. We are just here to talk about tokenomics, shell tokenomics. So this is an all shell day. And there's been a lot of community discourse around the plan for TGE and specifically vesting. So we wanted to give everyone a chance to have maybe a higher bandwidth, lower latency discussion with us about this. So, welcome. Currently, it's pretty sleepy in the Discord. I don't know, maybe everyone's doing something more productive with their uh, Tuesday. But I think if we don't have audience questions, we're just going to riff on the subject a little bit, go over the why of the plan as it stands, which hopefully would be elucidating. And yeah, I'll let the other guys introduce themselves now.
Hey, what's up? I'm Kenny, founder of Calorie Labs, and yeah, happy to be here in a, like Kyra said, higher latency or lower latency, higher throughput format to field any questions people have on sort of TGE plans and tokenomics.
Yeah, my name is Ishaan. I lead the engineering team here at Shell. Excited to be on my first Mindmeld live. It's a
Yeah,
milestone for me.
I forgot.
Got a got a juicy topic today as well. So should be
I forgot
interesting.
this is Ishan's first, but it is. Welcome. Kim9 didn't forget though. So Kim9,
Perfect.
you're correct. This is Ishan's first mind meld. Um, Good evening, Kim.
At least the
Yeah,
first one
Kenny, maybe
was
you want to start with like the how did we get to the current plan as far as TGE?
sure. Well, first let's just kind of review the plan,
Yeah.
uh, which is 20% of the total supply will be going to um, crab holders, which are basically LPs from the community. Also, like, correct guys, correct me if I get the numbers wrong. I'm not the most reliable person when it comes to these details, but 20% goes to crab holders, which are LPs from the community. The other 40% going to go to stakeholders like core team, investors, and stuff like that. And so that's at TG, and then we'll have the rest will be for the DAO treasury, and it'll be up to the DAO to decide what to do with those tokens. I think one of the big, most important, I think concepts or just things for this plan is that all stakeholders are kind of in the same boat. Um, that way you get like incentive alignment, and so I think therefore I think it's important that everyone, whether you're me, Sean, Cairo, um, angel investors, seed investors, OG LPs in Shell V1 or new Shell V2 LPs. I think it's important that everyone has pretty much playing by the same set of rules and has the same set of trade-offs. And I think also it's not so healthy for an ecosystem when there's these discontinuous like changes in the token supply. So there's like a really large increase in supply or even a really large decrease in supply, although that's a sort of not necessarily like a realistic scenario. But either way, I think these type of complex systems like a decentralized token based community or just any real economic system for that matter really it's optimal for changes like that to be incremental and predictable. And therefore, I think it's important that there's a bit of a vesting period for tokens at TGE. And I think it's also important that everyone has the same vesting period and has the same set of trade offs. One initial plan that we had originally was to give people the option to early vest at a penalty, and that penalty goes into a pool that then is given out to people that stake to the DAO. I think there's two problems with that approach we realized. One is what's the right vesting penalty? It's kind of hard to know. Um, Two, and probably one of the real problem is that would require writing out bespoke like vesting and DAO contracts. And I think just in terms of opportunity cost, that's really high. Every hour spent building out those new contracts, every dollar spent on smart contract audits, these are hours and dollars not spent on building out, other facets of the protocol. And I think that's kind of like the fundamental trade-off is if we want to, in a bear market, you got to be efficient with resources, and so I think that's probably the fundamental reason why it's important to go with options that are off the shelf, already vetted, already work, because that really significantly reduces the dev hours. And yeah, so that's why that option was eventually nixed, and we decided that it would probably be better to go with something similar to Sablier, which has already been out in production, already been audited, is heavily audited, and seems like a pretty good fit if you're looking to do a linear vesting stream. And so that's how we came to where we are today. And yeah, anything, I don't know, Cairo, Ishaan, anything you'd want to add to that?
Well, I think in lieu of having people to discuss with in real time on the Mindmeld chat, because I know everyone's in a different time zone, I was thinking I could go through and I could pull some quotes from recent discussion in the general chat, and we could maybe address those specifically. I think that would be a good way to do it. So the first, and I'm going to do my best to summarize this in good faith. We have BJCD, who is a crab holder, this morning said that they would like to see 50% vested over 3 years and 50% unlocked at TGE. The thought behind this being that they would like to see their tokens in hand sooner than later, and have more liquidity for the token. And they say that we should probably do a snapshot vote. And then Stablecoin and Alexander, who are also crab holders, respond and say, essentially, we don't even need to do a snapshot vote because we know how this would go. Everybody would vote for early unlock. And Alexander adds, I can't find any other explanation for the team's actions besides the fact that they agreed with the investors and decided to sell their tokens, leaving it to die. Now, I think it's pretty clear that if we wanted to do that, we would not be subjecting ourselves and our investors to the same lockup that we're subjecting the community to. I think that we would probably unlock our own tokens to dump and leave the vesting for the user base. But I guess I'll allow both of you to chime in on this idea of potentially a lump sum on TGE day and how you feel about that. I think you're muted, Kenny.
Well, first to address the idea that that we're doing this because we want to sell our tokens and leave the project to die. Just to be clear, I feel like if that were my goal or anyone on the team's goal, I don't think we would even launch a token. I feel like like if you knew how much money it costs to set up an offshore account and get all that set up, I feel like you would probably revise your opinion about what our agenda is. Because believe me, offshore accounts are they're kind of a pain in the ass, especially if you want to do it right.
Yeah, I think it's ironic that doing a lot of this stuff like setting up the foundation and sort of setting things up for the long term, because so much of it is like very dry behind the scenes work, it can give the appearance of like inactivity. Whereas if we were sort of trying to like pump and escape, to rug, so to speak, it would be much easier to create the appearance of like a flurry of activity in the present. So, yeah.
Well, it's a classic, like misdirection, where if you really wanted to, yeah, if you really wanted to like hoodwink someone, you'd make it look like you're doing the opposite. Um, anyway, in terms of like lump sum early vest, I'm still like not sure what the necessarily the best approach would be. I think, there's an argument to be made that it's better to just have the supply gradually increase over time than to have a lump sum up front. I think there's also an argument to be made that like it helps with price discovery to have enough of a lump sum at first so that there is like some liquidity. There can be like sellers and buyers for the token. And so yeah, there may be some valid reasons to do that instead. And I don't know. I'm not sure what the right call ultimately is going to be, and we'll never know what the right call is because we're only going to go with one thing, and we're not going to ever get to know what would have happened if we had did a different thing. I think the plan is still not to have an early like lump sum, but I think I posted this on the Discord where until everything is locked into a smart contract, they're really like nothing is like immutable. One thing I think is worth mentioning is that let's say we go with Sablier as like the vesting smart contract platform. These Sablier like streams, like they're basically like token streams, like streaming tokens is effectively what they're doing. These are represented as Ishaan, you please correct me if I misstate any of this, but those are represented as like ERC 721 tokens. And so like if someone really really wants to like get out, like there's nothing we could ever do to stop them from finding if they can find a buyer for their vesting stream, there's nothing we could do to stop them. In fact, we like they could even like, I mean, hear me out. This is kind of a crazy idea, but like, so we had like those toucans, right? We built an NFT AMM for those toucans. There's not really like a technical reason why you couldn't build an AMM for these vesting stream NFTs. And so like if someone really doesn't just wants to get out and get liquidity ASAP, like this streaming option doesn't preclude them from doing that as long as they can find like a someone who's willing to be on the opposite side of that exchange.
Yeah, it also allows the community to decide how important they feel a vesting NFT is in comparison to a vested token, a regular shell token. There's a rather long message from Hypersomniac yesterday that I think is rather thoughtful. I'm going to read part of it verbatim, if that's okay. They start out by saying, what is this? These anime girl profile pictures. Oftentimes it takes me a second to figure out what is going on. This one is not lewd, luckily. Anyway, Hypersomniac says, I personally do not mind the 2-year vesting because we're getting 20% of total supply, which is significantly more than what most airdrops give to the community. This is true. Thank you, Hypersomniac. Maybe I feel this way because I didn't go all in on Shell. I do, however, come with a few concerns regarding vesting. While I like how transparent the team is and how careful they are with the legal, I can't help but feel the team builds the product a little too slowly and is often very late to the party in terms of catalysts and major market movements. Like we're on the verge of another round of arbitrum incentives, and there's still no token. Um, which, yeah, I think, as you were saying, Kenny, is one reason to go with, say, Sablier instead of trying to do a bespoke contract. This relates to vesting, because my gut is now telling me the team would not really deliver much in the 2-year time frame of the vesting, resulting in a downtrend of the token. It also doesn't help that Shell seems to be operating in its own little bubble and doesn't really interact much with the ecosystem. To many outsiders, Shell seems like just a DEX. Yeah, I think there are valid points in here. Do you guys want to talk about that at all?
Could you summarize it again?
Yeah, essentially, they're like Hypersomniac is saying that it seems we build with an abundance of caution, potentially at the expense of speed, which makes them wonder, okay, over the course of 2 years, like, will what will be delivered and what will that mean for the fundamentals, right? Yeah.
Well, I think. Well, we're actually about on the cusp of releasing like a roadmap for what's coming down the pipeline. That
Yeah.
could potentially be released this week, if not early next week. And so I don't want to steal the thunder of that roadmap too much on this call. We can maybe set up a separate like live stream to discuss that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, let's probably do one next week.
But I think there's some truth to what he's saying. I feel like we have been late to the party a couple times, like we missed out on some of the Arbitrum airdrops, and I think ultimately what matters is being able to for Shell to grow into becoming a very like indispensable and extremely useful protocol for everyone in the ecosystem. And yeah, I mean, I think frankly it's not right now, and I don't think there's any way of we could credibly claim otherwise. I think there's some very impressive technical accomplishments and some great technology and great ideas in
Yeah.
the protocol, but like history is full of great technologies that don't become like successful products. And I think right now, like it's that's kind of what needs to happen. I'm not going to comment on future token value. I have no idea what the token value is going to do, and that's not really what I'm about. I'm just here, me personally. To me, it's about creating something that people are really going to love and value. And so, uh, the way I look at it is it's kind of like imagine you're like cooking something. I don't know how much degens cook, but I cook a decent amount. Not that I'm great at it, but I just don't like eating restaurant food or takeout food especially. And so, when I'm in the kitchen, I have to like cook myself dinner. It's like you can have all the ingredients laid out, and you can even be like 90% done with the dish, but until you like finish the last couple of steps, it's not going to taste very good, and or not necessarily going to like be something you'd really want to eat. And I feel like Shell right now is kind of like that 90% of the way done meal where there's a lot of great ingredients. They've all been combined and mixed together. There's a couple of steps that we got to get through, a couple more ingredients to like sprinkle in, and then something really cool and special is going to come out of it. And yeah,
I agree.
To
I
build on
think.
top of that,
Go ahead,
come on,
Ishaan.
Sean.
to build on top of that, just in terms of development as a whole, you always see that like 80% of the project takes 20% of the time, but that's like the last 20% that takes 80% of the time. So we have all like most of the fundamentals laid out, but it's just getting that final push to really set us over the edge and like make us competitive with others. I think it's a slow but rewarding process because you need to have strong fundamentals if you want to overtake incumbents or grow your project as a whole. All the projects that you saw that rose to the top pretty fast also crumbled pretty fast as well. So the projects that take their time and build out slowly are the ones that end up having a lasting effect. And I think that's what we're going for here.
I'm gonna summarize this one from Lou Will because if I read too many of these verbatim, it's gonna be like that. I don't know if you've seen the mean tweets. The celebrities read mean tweets. Which that could be
I do love
fun.
that though. That is
That
pretty
could be
funny.
fun, but it's sort of like a different vibe. I don't know. Lou Will essentially says vesting is appropriate for seed rounds and early investors, not LPs and people that have been earning crabs. If you make the shell tokens vested for people who have crabs, you will have deceived and wronged the people who have participated. So essentially, there's this idea that vesting is inappropriate for LPs at all. What do you think about that?
I never really, to be honest, never really understood that argument. Um, yeah, no one's ever. I mean, I'm not saying that they're wrong and I'm right. I'm just saying, like, I never. Maybe I'm just like that kid who's not good at math, like having to like sitting in like a physics class. Like maybe like, maybe Newton is right, but like I don't get calculus. Maybe they have a point, but I don't get it. Personally, I think there's an argument to be made. Uh, let's say if like LPs were getting like a smaller percentage of the token supply, then potentially, but I don't know. It doesn't like that argument. Like yeah, like they're like 20% is a pretty large amount, and so yeah, I don't know. Does anyone
I
else get the argument? Like Cairo or Ishaan, do you guys understand
I
why?
think a lot of it is derived from what people have seen in the past with other protocols. So obviously we're not the first team to ever do an airdrop, but up until now, most projects that you see will give all their tokens up front to those who are eligible. Right. So this creates like a precedent, and we're going against this precedent.
Yeah,
So obviously that can be uncomfortable for a lot of people, and they may not understand where we're coming from. So I
I
can
think
understand why people feel it.
it's a
Yeah.
norms argument because uh, I disagree with Lou Will that like an investor like has an opportunity cost for what they do with their money. They also have the potential of losing it if the venture doesn't pan out. If anything, that's more of a risky position than an LP, who also has the opportunity cost of their tokens, but presumably, barring a hack, is going to get them all back. I mean, you can also get into impermanent loss and things like that. But essentially, if you're an LP, you can expect to get your tokens back. It's just a question of what else you could have been doing with them in the time that you LP'd. And so I definitely think that it's not like, oh, you can't have any sort of like a vesting. Like you could almost argue that like shell points themselves are kind of like a vesting in effect with just like a big cliff, when there's TGE. Because either way you have this delay between when you take the action of LPing and when you get your tokens. I think the difference, as Ishaan was saying, is that you're not like entering into a contract or anything when you LP. There's a lot of like faith taken with the project. And where you might run into feeling like, you wish things were different is if like the tokenomics come out, whatever they are, and you go, oh, if I had known this is what the tokenomics were going to be, I wouldn't have LP'd, you know?
I think that's a fair point. Like, if someone doesn't have all the information and
Yeah.
information changes over the course of their action, that's not necessarily fair to them, right?
But I also think there's a difference between a norm and like a promise. And I think that we as a team have been very careful not to promise things that then don't I don't know, Kenny. Anything else to say on that?
Investors in Cowrie Labs didn't know how many tokens they're going to get and when they were going to get them either.
Yeah.
So,
I also think you have to like, speaking of aligned incentives, you have to assume that like we're not arbitrarily making decisions to punish LPs. Like ideally what's good for LPs is what's good for everybody. So
but
um,
we're all going to end up being token holders at the end of the day. I
exactly.
think. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like there's going to be uh, LPs that have a larger percentage of the token supply than many investors, for what it's worth. I won't name names because I'm not even sure what their names are, but
Uh, Going through other messages. More people arguing for an upfront. It seems like there's sort of two camps that have similar but slightly different goals. The one camp wants to keep the vesting system, but also have an upfront lump of 5 to 30%, and the other camp wants no vesting at all and the entire amount available on TGE. And I would say the former is a little bit larger than the latter, from what I can tell.
the more people from just from reading on
It,
Discord,
it
you think more
appears
people
more
are.
people want the vesting. They just also want some amount of it up front, either for liquidity or you know to buy Christmas presents. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I do
Yeah,
can understand. Oh, go on, Cairo.
no. I'm just reading through everything. Go ahead, Kenny.
Oh, I can understand from a psychological standpoint how much nicer it is to get like a big chunk right off the bat than to kind of wait a month before you can claim a chunk. Um,
I think there's also um, I actually don't want to speculate on this. I think there's market psychology in play here, but that's for the users to figure out. I think that people make plans about what they're going to do with their tokens based on past airdrops, and if the vesting announcement seems like it's going to throw a wrench in their very rigid um, plan, that may cause some distress. But
I think it's worth touching on why we chose the system in the first place, especially in terms
Mhm.
of the philosophy that every stakeholder should be on the same plan, because I don't know of any other projects that have that. Typically, like with the Arbitrum airdrop, for example, they airdropped all their tokens up front, and then the team and the investors were subject to like some cliff period, and then they started linearly vesting after that. So why did we choose this system as opposed to doing a tried and tested system as we've seen with other projects?
well, it just seems like the most fair way to go about it, I guess, to me, anyway, because at the end of the day, I think everyone wants to see the protocol succeed, and I think just fundamentally, like if you want to have like a functioning political system, which is sort of what a DAO has to become, right? I feel like you have to have this mentality that everyone's in the same boat and we're all like no one's above like rowing, no matter who you are, no matter how high or how low you are. Everyone has to pull. And I don't know, maybe this is sort of like a Hawaiian mindset, but I think every token holder is in the boat, and you got to row. You got to help row, and so that's kind of the at least that's my philosophy.
Um, I'll say this. I'm in support of linear vesting for everyone. I think it's very uniquely fair and honorable to give team investors and LPs all the same vesting schedule. There are two things that I'm open to that I think the community has sort of put out there or suggested. One is some sort of lump upfront, um, both to one, create liquid markets and to make people happy. How much it is, I don't know. I think we could decide that. We could also put up some kind of vote. The other thing that I'm open to is the idea of letting people find counterparties to take their vesting NFTs. I think, there are all kinds of reasons why someone may want to step away from either shell or from crypto or technology entirely. You may decide you're going to go and be a monk in the mountains, and not have a computer. And if you're getting this drip of shell tokens, I think it makes sense to give somebody a way to like hand that off. And what the technical side of that would be, I don't know. But yeah, that's where I stand. I do stand behind the vesting system.
I think also a lot of other projects, it's let's just I don't let's just say it's not necessarily as fair as it might seem on the surface. Uh,
This has been a very quiet day, which is kind of its own signal because this time is actually a pretty good time as far as people being online and awake. Oh, I know it's a little late for Europe, but it's hard to make everybody happy when you have community all over the world. So the fact that nobody's here, I think means ultimately it's kind of in our hands. We're the ones behind the wheel. Do some more mean tweets.
Hit me.
Maybe next time. Thanks so.
Let's do one more, and then we'll sign off.
One more? Okay, let me see if I can find a really mean one.
Yeah,
Can you
find the meanest one. Well, that'll be the
Can
meanest
you kill
one.
time while I look for a really mean one?
What was that?
Can you kill time while I look for a really mean one?
Yeah.
Can you, I don't know,
Oh,
ramble?
I'm not muted, right? Okay. Let's hear Kim9. A bit disappointed that people didn't come to chat, ask questions during the call. Many complaints, but are not willing to actually discuss their ideas, thoughts directly with you. Yeah. Yeah, and it's. I mean, I'm not. I'll be honest. I'm not entirely disappointed that I'm not getting dumped on and flamed uh, during the live stream. But I think, yeah, I think it is telling him that no one, not too many people showed up to voice their complaints to our faces, our virtual faces. So
I think that's also just a component of human psychology. Like everyone's a keyboard warrior when they're behind a screen. And in this situation, you can still be behind a screen. Like you're not up here on the stage debating with us,
Yeah,
but
but you do have
getting
to
your,
watch somebody's like real human face
yeah.
and
yeah, you
voice.
get to see the hurt in my eyes.
I,
Um,
it's hard to find a really bad one because everyone is being fairly polite. I mean, someone says
Sometimes the
vesting
polite
is the
ones hurt the
worst thing you
most,
can
though.
do.
I
I can think of many worse things we could do, like a lot.
welcome to the live stream, Reem. We're glad woke up at 4 a.m. or are still awake at 4 a.m.
Um,
Um,
let's see. I'm about to give up. Oh, sorry. Our users are too eloquent and thoughtful.
well,
I can't find.
it can be a thoughtful one. It doesn't have to be a mean one.
All right. Oh wait, this one might be mean.
I do feel like there's often a silent majority.
Uh, this guy says, "We know everyone will dump our shitcoins, so we just won't let them is not a solution. Locking up trading just shows weakness." I think that's referring to crabs. I'm not sure what else that would be referring to.
I think the
I
vesting
think,
maybe.
yeah, that's saying like, oh, since we're not airdropping everything at once, we're scared of dumping, so we're going to give it slowly over time instead. But if you think about it, that just means like there's going to be continuous dumping if those people wanted to dump anyway, right? I don't think it makes a difference in the long run. People are going to dump when they want to dump, whether that's every block or all at once.
Yeah, I just want to like reiterate, like token prices are not something that I personally care about or am invested in. The reasoning behind like vesting like linearly versus just having it all be like a giant lump sum is that like whenever you have any kind of like economic system, it's usually like a lot better to have things happen like change like incrementally than to just like dump a bunch of shit onto it. Like imagine like my background's in economics, right? And so like if you're the Fed, you don't go from like 0% interest to like 5% interest rates like overnight. That would just fuck the system. What you do is you raise it by a quarter of a percent like, every few months. And that gives the system like time to sort of adjust and reorient. Um that's basically like the logic of having like vesting. Like 60% of the supply is just gonna if you just dump 60% of the supply on the market right off the bat, it's not like healthy for the ecosystem. If you let that supply like gradually and predictably increase, then that's like a lot better from like a system standpoint.
Okay, I give up. It's just the same message over and over again. People want more than a 0% unlock on day one. I tried, guys. Be meaner and maybe we'll feature you on the next
Yeah.
podcast. Wait, I think we've just created a perverse incentive here. Um,
Well, how about this? Well, if someone says something really nice and sweet that like can make Ishaan smile when he reads it, then we'll give it a shout out as well.
it's good. Yeah, we need a completely bimodal discourse.
Well,
Here
it's just like
we're gonna support
any
each
kind of
other.
media. It's like either has to be really happy or really depressing. Like anything that's sort of like mid is gonna just be boring and no one's gonna pay attention.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we've said what there is to say. Reem, watch the sunrise, have a nice cup of coffee or tea or something, wherever you are in the world, sir.
Yeah,
And this
well,
will be
Reem said
recorded,
people will not
so
dump if there is utility. If holding will give you incentive, people will hold. I I agree with that.
yeah, and there's a
Um,
lot we could talk about as far as staking and voting that I would hope counts as utility. Are you consider to delay token launch if market is down? That's a good question. Um,
I mean, if everyone wanted to delay the token, I personally wouldn't have a problem with delaying it. I don't know. I'm just don't want to piss people off even more than they've already been
yeah,
pissed off. But Reem, if you think that there's would be support um for a delayed token launch, like
at everyone. Due to the request of Reem, we will be delaying the token launch indefinitely.
indefinitely until the market picks up.
Please message Reem and thank him for this suggestion if you have questions about the delay.
Yeah. I know. All right, guys. New TGE date. No, I'm just kidding.
No, we're
Um,
just kidding, Reem. It's not on you. Um, yeah, this is something I wonder if we were to put the amount of day one unlock to a crab vote, would it always just be the highest one of whatever the options are that we give? You
only
know
one
what I mean?
about.
Like if we gave like 1, 5, 10, 20, would it be 20? If we gave 20, 40, 60, 80, would it be 80? You know? I really don't know. And what does that say about incentives and like ethos, you know? If the decision the crabs would make is not in step with what we end up setting up, you know?
Yeah, I don't know. Unf Unfortunately, we'll never know exactly how crabs would vote in every scenario because we're not going to have them vote in every scenario.
Yeah, I guess we could do polling, but I think the helping people understand that it's like non-binding polling would not be worth the risk of making it appear to be like a legitimate referendum. So I don't think we'll do that.
Indeed.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we wrap this one up? No.
I don't think so.
Well, this is pretty low key. Hopefully, if anyone has any questions on why we're doing what we're doing, they can go back and watch this and maybe be elucidated a little bit. Kim and Reem, thanks for showing up. And we will get back to the regular mind melds probably next week with the roadmap and maybe get some guests through the rest of the year.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Ishaan, for jumping on, sharing the dev side of your wisdom. And see y'all on the Discord.
Aloha.
Aloha.